Good evening, everybody. I'm coming out here because this makes me feel really extra short. Welcome to tonight's lecture. I am Megan Kaufman. I'm the founder and owner of Casey Studio Architecture. We're a commercial firm downtown, and I'm also on the leadership team for the Women in Architecture. God bless you. So Women in Architecture is a task force of the AIA, and we support women in any way we can. And usually that looks like hosting networking events, workshops, building tours, lectures, etc. And we're a very inclusive group. So while it does say women in architecture, men are also involved, and we love to see you there. So we have some events coming up that I wanted to make you aware of. The first is actually in 10 days. It's an unplugged event. It's co-hosted with NAOIC, and we will be talking about how network is your net worth. So really fostering community over competition. And I will just give a shout out to In Situ. I think they do it better than most. So thank you again for In Situ and all you do hosting this event. We also have a networking coffee on September 5th. We have a Behind the Design Hers lecture on October 30th. Our holiday party will be in December. And please save the date for February 20th, which will be our Women in Architecture breakfast. So if you haven't been before, it's over 200 people. It's a fantastic event, and we hope to see you there. I will be handing the mic to Catherine Hogan, who is a great representation of a powerful woman in architecture. So let's give it up for Catherine.
Help! Let's see here. You do that. Okay, sounds good. Hi, everyone. Thank you. It's great to be here this evening, and our firm, Catherine Hogan Architects, is excited to sponsor this lecture. Thank you, In Situ Studio, for their efforts to bring such a high-quality lecture series to our place. Without them, we would not have this opportunity to learn from both local leaders and international voices. It's essential for us to be inspired as a city and as designers. With that said, it's an honor to introduce Betsy Williamson, and I'm very excited for tonight's lecture. Betsy is a principal of Williamson, an award-winning and internationally recognized practice in Toronto. Their portfolio, which spans from master plans to furniture, is a testament to their meticulous attention to detail. We learned from Betsy at lunch today that the firm is open to any project that promises to be interesting, regardless of scale or budget, as long as it has a significant design impact. Founded on research that integrates digital fabrication and wood construction within a broader cultural context, Betsy's projects have garnered significant recognition and numerous accolades. These include the Professional Prix de Rome in Architecture from the Canada Council of the Arts, the Emerging Architectural Practice Award from the Royal Architectural Institute of Canada, and the Emerging Voices Award from the Architectural League of New York. Betsy is also a strong advocate for equality within the profession. Alongside a group of like-minded architects, she is dedicated to promoting equality through a series of events in Toronto aimed at advancing women in the profession via mentorship, networking, and leadership opportunities. We heard about that some today, and they sounded really, really interesting and productive. I have drawn inspiration from Betsy's firm for many years. Their innovative strategies in the realm of housing not only address current challenges, but also provide alternative solutions that are both practical and sustainable. What sets their work apart is their commitment to design values. Please join me in welcoming Betsy to the stage. We are all fortunate to have her here in Raleigh this evening.
Can I take that?
Yes, that'd be good.
And let me see if I can establish this.
Oh, we went dark.
Yeah, we did. There we go.
There we go.
Okay. This needs to be pretty close to your mouth.
Okay, I might need to hold it because
You can do that.
that way. Thank you, everyone, for coming out today. I'm so happy to be here and happy for the invitation to come talk to all of you tonight. My name is Betsy. I'm an architect in Toronto. And when we discuss architecture kind of in our office or kind of with groups, we talk about public realm, sustainability, materiality, and geometry. we engage these critiques, but often dance around things that we really want to talk about. What does the building look like? How do you make a beautiful building? And the projects that we do, both in our office, are sometimes speculative. So here you're seeing a handful of institutional and residential projects that are unbuilt, but things that we've been thinking about recently. And our challenge is to maintain a critical practice while also having a professional practice. So we're balancing client interests with our architectural voice. So the things that we want to do and the things that we have to do become the same thing. Buildings have to function well, be sustainable, meet code, be resilient, but they also simply must be beautiful. So everything that you're seeing on this page is built under construction or kind of halfway there. So the project on the top left is our first affordable housing project that we're really proud of, which you'll have to see next time because I'll show it when it's done. So architecture happens through conversation. This is Williamson studio as we are right now. So it's myself, my husband and partner Shane Williamson, who's a full-time faculty at University of Toronto, Byron, Young, Yana, Hannah, David, Pat, and Jess. And they are fabulous. And nothing that I'm showing today is done by me. It's done by a team. And we work together, talk about design, kind of kill ourselves over details as a group. So we work with material detail at various scales. So from wall surfaces, on the right is an air vent for a coffee roastery. We work with modular materials. What you're seeing here is a brick tasting bar at a cannabis shop in Toronto, trying to get the most out of the simplest material possible. Here is a light fixture at the scale of a ceiling, using off-the-shelf manufactured items and putting them together to create a motif that is similar to the coffee shop that we did this in. Bringing this into elevational materials. So again, creating a surface that's not your standard brick surface, but using standard molded bricks to make something with texture and life that casts shadows. Like Catherine said, early in our practice, we started doing a lot of work with milling, CNC milling and design. Shane actually fabricated this facade at the University of Toronto on the milling machine there. And the design exercise here was varying the width of the board with the depth of the mill to create an ombre pattern around this house. And we've always used wood. We try to think about it where the solid is thought about differently as the veneer, and I'll talk about this a little bit more when I talk about this project further on in the talk. We look at edges and surfaces. Even the direction of the veneer becomes like highly important. Even though this detail is 20 feet in the air, we made sure that the diagonal pattern met kind of as a butterfly detail in the middle of this Y column. So I am not originally from Toronto. I grew up in the Chicagoland area in LaGrange, Illinois. That's where the little star on the map is. So I've spent the majority of my life in the Great Lakes region. I was actually, this is the spoiler, I was born in Havelock, North Carolina. I know, this is where like you all come onto my side right away. My dad was stationed, he was a Navy man stationed at MCAS in Cherry Point. And my mom tells me every year on my birthday, there was sand on the floor and the doctor was wearing flip-flops. And that's my birth story. So I do have roots in this area. Shane is from Savannah, Georgia. So we are down here every year, and we really love everything but maybe August in Georgia, which is what I'm doing next month. So it's going to be a little hot. But Toronto is our adopted home. We moved there in 1999, so I've been there 25 years. It is the 5th largest city in North America. It's just a tad smaller than Chicago. And the surrounding area, it curls around the northwest lake shore of Lake Ontario. The associated region is known as the Golden Horseshoe. This contains over 20% of the population of Canada lives in this gold region there. So this might seem like a really impressive number. And then you realize that the population of Canada is a little bit smaller than the population of California. So what we have is a huge landmass full of natural resources. So the history of kind of natural resources in Canada has always kind of been primarily centered around gas, oil. Timber is really the big one. We're a natural resource economy, softwood lumber, oil, water, natural gas, major exports. And ever since kind of the country was colonized, the timber has been like a major kind of money source for the country. You can even see here on the back, when we used to have $1, now we have a loonie, just so you don't go walking around thinking that we have dollars up north. We've got little coins. We've got there's a log flow in the shadow of the country's Parliament building. Materials are primarily sold as raw materials. So this is another log flow on the west coast of Fraser River in British Columbia. Canada leads the world in wood exports with 31 billion kilograms of wood annually produced and exported as sawed, timber, pulp, or paper, with the US, China, and Japan as the largest foreign markets. So if you've been wondering why we've been in the news so much in the last 6 months, this is a big part of the reason why. So Canada has a long history of building in wood. So the indigenous peoples of Turtle Island developed rich building traditions thousands of years before the arrival of the first Europeans. There's a longhouse reconstruction on the upper right from 1640, which is a basic house type of pre-contact northern Iroquois. It's all about communal living. The Chicotlan Pit House, which is on the bottom right, it's regarded as North America's oldest house type. And then the Haida Plank House, that's originated in 2800 BCE. That's the west coast of Canada. And then post-colonization, much more recent history, you see the Habitation de Quebec. That is the first colonial building built as a fort and trading center in Quebec. And then on the right, you see the most kind of recent history, which is John and Patricia Patkow's Audin Art Center on the West Coast. There's also a deep tradition of wood structures defining industrial growth. So the Mountain Creek Trestle Bridge in 1890, Selkirk's, British Columbia, and then the famous Saskatchewan Prairie Silo. So all the way across from east to west, there is a history of the people living in our region building from the materials around them. So why is this important? Timber is important, and these are stills from NASA did this amazing animation of a year in the life of carbon in the atmosphere. It's Googleable and it's on YouTube, and it's just a really cool video to watch. It shows that in the winter months, which are on the left, the carbon in the atmosphere in red is highly concentrated over urban centers. And then when the trees all pop their leaves and you see August 2nd on the right, you can see how much carbon is removed from the air. So keeping things like how much carbon we're putting into the atmosphere is hugely important as architects. We have so much influence on the kinds of building materials that are used and the resources that are consumed. So that's my little speech part. So we have always seen opportunity to use timber from our very earliest work. It's light, it's cheap, it's easily machinable. This is a project for a ski club called the Osler Bluff Ski Club. It's in the town of Blue Mountains, about 2 hours north of Toronto. And it was the renovation of a 50-year-old heavy timber and core slab building. And we used wood to connect the club history to its more modern past. So here is a before and after of the same side of the club. All the white underneath the wood planks that you see, this on the left, the whole building was covered in asbestos stucco. So the first thing we had to do was bubble the building, remove all the asbestos. You can see a little bit more here. This is the before picture. And all of the heavy timber here was exposed to the elements. So it had these kind of like really beautiful beams. They were all cracked. Some had cracks about an inch wide. And everything was leaking. It just really wasn't working that well as a building, and it was slightly too small. Our solution was to surface the entire building in a wood-backed curtain wall skin and treated Douglas fir. So everything you're seeing on the face of the building is Douglas fir that's treated with a Sanson product to keep it bright so it won't weather. And we put all of this outboard of all of the heavy timber. And you can see it in this slide here, especially on the right, this layering. So we were able to preserve the original wood structure, use all of the existing timbers, and then the skin kind of stabilized it environmentally so that it would, say, have another 50 to 75 year lifespan. So the image on the left shows some of the heavy timber structures here, these kind of the chunky ones, and then the new bubble of space that we built was about a 15,000 square foot addition that we put on the far end there. Unifying these two things came through a treatment of the ceiling. So you'll see in the images, and this is a digital model that serves to us as sort of like the physical model of the reflected ceiling plan. So you're seeing the ceiling kind of carved into this wood surface. So we did a custom acoustic ceiling here because the club was so loud that you couldn't have a conversation with the person standing next to you. So we had to dampen the noise. So we did a multi-layer kind of dampening system on the upside of these Douglas fir slats, cranked all the panels into place above, and then put this in between every single wood beam, whether it was old or new, so that when you come into the club, the primary form is of this slatted wood ceiling. So here it is at an older space looking down the hallway into the newer space. Here it is at a low point with the new space beyond, and this is the new bar area that we built. And then this is an image of the main gabled space that we constructed using these Y-shaped columns, which are done in steel to get the spans, and then fully clad in millwork. So they didn't have any space to watch the ski races. So, I mean, just to be clear, Ontario does not really have skiing per se. It's very low hills that you can go up and down. It takes you maybe a couple of minutes to get up a high-speed chairlift. It takes you a couple of minutes to get down the hill. So one of the reasons why they needed to redo the clubhouse was that everyone was getting all their runs in by lunchtime, and then sitting around saying, like, we can't like do that anymore. Like, what else do we do? So they had started to plan all of these activities in this old clubhouse that didn't really have any generous spaces. So part of the reason for this is to kind of absorb different types of exercise classes so that the older folks who ski here could be fit enough to keep, as they would say, they don't ski to keep fit, they keep fit so they can ski. And it became like it's a very nice kind of social activity and a lot of family activity. So it's kind of a great thing to do in the winter. And when you have long winters like we do, if you don't get outside, you're really, you kind of feel it by the end. So a lot of this was sort of to maintain a healthy winter lifestyle. So as you can see in the oops, my slide has not caught up to the image yet. I'm just gonna say that the edge that you can see here of the Y column, you'll see in just a second. I'm going to go back and then forward again. And I am stuck. So I'm going to go forward one more. Nope. So I can just talk for a little bit. Sure, no worries. So, has anyone in the crowd been to Toronto? Hey, that's a pretty good number. Did you go there for fun, work, vacation? Were you just passing through? Vacation?
We worked on the University of Toronto.
Oh, right, that's good. Yeah, the academic buildings up there are fantastic. Yeah. So you got to see quite a bit of work then, I imagine, up there. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, as a transplant to the city, what was really nice is that it's a fairly welcoming atmosphere. So the architects are all kind of friendly with each other. We all kind of like hang out, for lack of a better word. And there's a good kind of supportive community, which I thought was really nice. We do compete against each other for projects, but it's kind of a friendly competition because there's, Toronto's been booming for so many years now that there hasn't been a lack of work at all kind of going around. So it's a great place to practice. Okay, so here we are, we're back on. So it looks like the slide's a little big, and so it's cutting off, it's not quite fit, yeah. No. Yep, we'll get there. I'm just going to go back to this one. So I'm going to say what I was going to say about the slides, and then I'll go through them kind of like quickly, so I'm not taking too much time. But if you see the edges of the Y column, the flat sides are made out of solid oak. And we did that so that we could carve in an inset LED strip, so that would highlight that edge. And we got the inspiration to do that by looking at historically the carved wood skis. So they, before they were kind of high tech and fiberglass, they would make them out of wood and then carve into them to get the thin portions and the fat portions. And there's some really beautiful examples of these. So that was the impetus. You see it here on the left, and then you see the carved light fixture on the right in the Y column. There we go. A few more views of the space. And here we are at the end. So that's the outside view looking in, where you can see that this big bubble of space at the end, and the Y columns. So here we are back in Toronto. So Toronto is a city within a park, and the city's primary geological feature is a system of large ravines which cuts through the city grid. So it's an urban forest and is primarily designated as parkland. It's largely undeveloped and fiercely protected by regional conservation authorities. So here's a map of all the parkland that kind of have rivers at the bottom of them that trickle into Lake Ontario. So there are buildable lots that back up onto this ravine system, is what it's called. And here you see the downtown Toronto superimposed over the ravines. So if you picture it, the city grid is all on one level, and the ravines start here and dig down towards the natural water courses, so these crevices. And what you have, this is like the urban center. And our work, this is probably half the projects that we have, is spread all across the city. Our office is there in red at the bottom. And we're on the east end of Toronto. And one such ravine project, which are the most prized lots in Toronto, they have the largest land value. It's the ones that primarily get custom homes built on them. This one is called the Bala Line House because it's situated on a ravine with an old rail spur at the bottom called Bala Line. So this project is going to just show briefly as an example of the kind of section that's achievable. So the houses all line up on the street face, and then the ravine cuts down in section. In this project, we made a great effort to reinforce and replicate the slope of the ravine as it comes up figuratively through the project. So this is one of the projects that we did fairly early in our career, and it's kind of like the one big move, where the big move is a big corner window that opens fully, a wood window onto two sides. It connects the living space to the ravine, and it's for a family with 3 kids. And from here, the ravine kind of like gently flows down like 200 feet to the bottom. So here we have kind of a dip, as you saw in the section, where you have the stairs coming up. The living room is sunk low, and the kitchen is situated on the kind of the upper level. And when you open the windows at the front and the windows at the back, you get a full kind of breeze through the entire building. So this is one of an early project where we actually didn't install any cooling into the project. We have operable windows high. The family opens kind of everything up to flush the house out, and it's working relatively well. So just for reference, our summers get about as hot as it is today. So I know we don't get the heat that you all had last week. even in this project, we try to, even that's kind of fairly low budget from our end. So it's a stucco house with some wood and concrete detailing, and then we were able to do this custom concrete bench right at the front. So this is another project, the Grange Triple Double, and this was one of the first forays that we did into multi-generational housing. So as issues of sustainability have really been one of the most prevalent conversations of the last, say, 15 years, it all gets kind of distilled down to metrics. So how much carbon you have sequestered, what's your energy, what are your lead points. With this project, we tried to think about what are the measurements that speak to the quality of life that you can have when you're living in a city, and how can we change the current paradigm into one that includes flexibility, community, distance to your local grocery, the amount of green space you have, to try to address kind of a new set of criteria and develop solutions to something we are all facing, which is aging. So this metropolis came out about 10 years ago. And this is when one of these kind of started to enter the zeitgeist about intergenerational living. And I love the New Yorker cartoon from the right. It's like, you can't move back here because we're moving in with our parents. And so in Toronto, the ability to buy in the housing market is really challenging. Starter homes don't really exist anymore. So as we know, the population is aging across the world. And for this project, this started because the homeowners, like on a couple in their 30s, they were living in a small condominium. Their parents were also living in a little bit of a larger condominium and wanted to downsize. And so they decided to move in together. So the grandparents would have someone to look after them. The parents would have someone to look after their son, because he was little at the time when we started this project. And they were in this location, because they owned this piece of property here in Orange, but it's also kind of in the middle of everything in the Chinatown in downtown Toronto, which is on Spadina Avenue here. It steps away from the Art Gallery of Ontario, which is a major cultural institution, huge park on Grange Park. So there's something for every member of the family. So the house that we tore down is there on the left, dilapidated, raccoons, just, the worst. And then the context for this house is housing in between Chinatown and the AGO is all this 3-story painted brick, a lot of shops on the ground floor, and they all kind of, the corners of the urban corners here all kind of have the same kind of typological form. This is the other context for the project. So this is Dundas Avenue. You see the AGO, which is with the Frank Gehry edition, right on the left of the screen at the top. But the Chinatown is a vibrant, thriving community, and this was where the family would buy their groceries every day. All their favorite restaurants were here. So this is where their friends and family were. So to create this, which was a fairly unusual ask from a client, we started to develop a process where we researched the types of units allowed by the City of Toronto, which provided the raw material for the spatial organization of this project. So here they are diagrammed. It's from a detached home to a duplex, a triplex, a fourplex, apartments, et cetera, et cetera. And of all the building types recognized by the city, we found that a second suite, a duplex, and a bed sitting room could merge together to create this mix that we called the triple double. It was economically feasible, it was allowable under the zoning bylaw, and it was definitely an unconventional form. So here you see the massing principles are to make it slightly taller than it needed to be. They didn't have all the money in the world, so we had to build only the amount of square footage that they could afford, but we wanted to match the height so the house held the corner. We used painted brick, and we call it like a blowfish, because the house is bigger on the facade than it is behind the facade. So if you look on the right-hand side, the white rectangle that juts out to the right, there's actually a garden space behind there, but it looked too small when we just had fit the form to the program, so we made it bigger than it needed to be. There's 2 entrances. There's a family entrance on the left, and then an entrance to the apartment on the right. So there's private access. So the entrance on the left is to the red and the yellow bit, when the single family home kind of juts up over the top. and the entrance on the right is to the green and the blue. And so these correspond to apartments that can be shared or split apart depending on what the family needs. And each unit has a dedicated green private space. So the extended family shares the courtyard on the left, which is the shared family space. The primary bedroom has the courtyard on top, and then there's the courtyard on the right behind the facade is actually off of the second floor. And then by organizing all of these spaces, climbing up and over the top, we create an effect where you can open the patio doors and all the warm air just shoots up through the top of the house. Okay, so here we are back at the facade. So while not explicitly performative by measures of sustainability, there were a few things that we did to kind of add conservation into this project. The brick facade is made up of leftover bricks. So what that means is we called the yards around in Toronto, and we said, do you have any bricks that aren't enough to actually sell, and can we buy them for like half price? So we got our bricks for pennies on the dollar, put them all up, and then painted them white to unify them. They're called remainder bricks, so you can buy those like kind of cheap around. And then here, there's also a low wall-to-window ratio, so it's actually really efficient, especially on the north side. And solar panels on all the flat roofs that are not green. So here you see the doors are marked by red, so that is the entrance to the apartments. And this is the entrance to the family entrance. Okay, so this is a kind of as if I peeled the brick off of that previous image. So what's the big premise of the project is that if you see the courtyard here, and then the kind of the grid space, that is the family living room. Right now, there is an entry closet with a door in between the family living room and the apartment on the right. The apartment on the right is sized to be fully handicapped accessible, so that if the Shazan's parents couldn't climb stairs anymore, so they originally were supposed to take the bedroom on the second floor, they could move down into the apartment on the ground floor, not climb any stairs. The apartment on the ground floor is also connected to another 2-bedroom unit below, so you could have a separate rental unit or a live-in caregiver. The family space on the basement on the left belongs to the family. So if you think about it, there's kind of like 3 separate living units, and they all have doors between, so you could combine them all into one, separate them all out to be individual. They've had renters on the ground floor. Ryan had his business in the full basement for a little while. And when Shazan's parents saw the house, they liked the top floor so much they took the primary bedroom for themselves. And so Shazan and Ryan ended up moving on to the second floor right away. But here's a view of the bookcase built into the stairwell. The family spaces are centered around the courtyard, this living room, and the kitchen and dining room. And the doors can completely open and blend all these spaces together. So one of the big conversations that we had during the design of this project, and it changed so much during the design phase, was that Shazan and Ryan did not want to feel like they were teenagers again living at home with mom and dad. And so for a while, the design had really had 2 separate stairs that kind of intertwined around each other, allowing the parents to have a path through the house and Shazan and Ryan to have a fully separate path through the house. And it was interesting, but it took up a lot of space. And so kind of the economics of the project started to shift so that we would just have the one kind of linear stair that went all the way up. Again, this house is kind of early in the career. All of the millwork is out of the box, meaning it's not custom. It's kind of IKEA-like installed. It got to the point where the family became so comfortable kind of living together that, even during the photo shoot, Shazan's dad, they were having dinner. We were like, okay, we'll take the night shot, family dinner shot. Shazan's dad kind of ran through the image with his takeout, because he prefers to get takeout from his favorite restaurants than he does eat with Ryan and Hayden and Shazan at the table. So here's a corner view, and then just a few simple views of the inside looking out. And when we're talking about the windows and scale, this is Shazan's dad on the right. You can see how high up that third floor window is. So they're composed on the exterior to make a kind of a singular corner formal gesture. And on the inside, this one just happens to be, it's almost like a sky view window. Part of the final exercise of this project is what we call a visual pro forma, which talks about all the different configurations generationally through the project. How you can start with a couple, have a grandparents, have a second generation, and a third kind of, 03 is the baby generation growing up and aging through the house, each one in their own way. So Ancaster Creek is the second intergenerational home that we did. This is very different. It's a suburban context. It's on a floodplain that traverses the back of the property. So you see the creek here. And the impetus behind this project was to have all of the rooms, all the primary family spaces face the creek, have a fairly blank facade to the front because it was a pretty busy suburban street. And then spatially, instead of having two homes, one for the couple who lived at the house and one for the parents, the blue is kitchen, dining, living, an en-suite suite, and a library. And then the yellow is the parents' suite. So that is the indoor parking, a guest suite for other family members or a caregiver, an ensuite, and a kitchen and living. And the blue kind of steps over the yellow. So it's conceived as two distinct residences. And formally, it's kind of, again, making volumes that are slightly larger than necessary to kind of hold the formal shape of the house. You see here the Douglas fir, which was a custom siding. It was a kind of 2-inch wide and then routed in between to give it a 1-inch appearance. And then this is a local limestone, and we stacked it with the kind of the way that Frank Lloyd Wright did his mortar joints. So we filled the joints of all the verticals and then deeply raked as much as we could the horizontal joints to get the striation, and then sized the limestone to feel like it was being compressed as you went from the top down. So this is like one of those projects, you spent a lot of time and a lot of energy on this one. So this is behind that volume. So that bump at the entry is the kitchen for the main residence. You can see it's got a 20-foot tall pyramidal ceiling that's there to let light in. The focus is really on the view, but a lot of our interiors try to take a bit more space than just the room that you're in to give a lot of geometry to the exterior. That's kind of one reason. On the interior, to make the house feel bigger than it actually is in plan. So this is a view towards the courtyard in between the kitchen and the living area. And this is a view of the back elevation. So that kitchen with the pyramidal roof is on the right and the living room is on the left. So the main feature of this house, aside from the programmatic geometry of one kind of household climbing over another, is this spiral stair. So this is one kind of feature that we kind of looked at a lot of different options for this. And then when we came upon the spiral, we were really kind of fascinated with it because it seems like almost too big a stair for the project. The space that you're looking at here is a dining room space that's sandwiched in between the one window on the exterior and the courtyard on the riverside. And the spiral is an unfurling spiral, so the geometry changes as it kind of goes up. And this is the stair that the owners use to get to their primary suite. So here they are in the living room with Ben's mom. And this is just a really quick view of her suite. So Ben's parents were aging. They were having memory issues. So we designed this suite with master shutoffs for power, induction cooktop, hidden drain. So if they left a pot running and forgot about it and the water was on, the water would have somewhere to go. Anything that we could research and find to have it as an amenity to make the suite safer for them. A lot of it came relative to lighting and handles and poles of the things we all know. That's all incorporated into this part of the project. So this is a view of the stair looking from the living room back. And then this is it in construction. So it's a really, our structural engineer was a young woman named Shannon, and she devised the stair to be fully built out of wood, aside from 1/4 inch thick ribbon plate, and there's one on one side of the riser and then one on the other, and these basically form 2 columns, and they spiral kind of apart from each. Well, the spiral opens as it goes up, and then the 2 sides are tied together with timber. So unbelievably, the stair was fully structural even without the side railings. The side railings are about this thick. They help stabilize it for sure. It's a little bouncy in this stage, but it definitely, the contractor was not convinced that this was enough and kept trying to add wood underneath. And she would go to site and be like, no, take it out. Like, take it out. This is done, you know. And what it provided, the reconciliation with the back wall provides like this amazing amount of complexity and views. The veneer that was done at the very end of this was done by the flooring contractor, believe it or not. So they took on the responsibility. They built a full mock-up of the stair in their shop, built the entire stair, figured out how to match up the veneer so the grain was all kind of tapered in. I mean, it was just an incredible amount of work, and they did a really wonderful job. So a view on the second floor looking out the window, a view from the library, and then a view of the composition of the rear of the house. So the primary suite is the piece that juts out, and then the kitchen is the piece that juts up there. And I really love this view of the cantilevered piece. So the Garden Laneway house is on the far west end of Toronto. So in 2019, the city officially began to allow legal laneway units to be built in Toronto. So here's a before and after of this home. So there are 2,400 public lanes in Toronto. They're all here in orange. That's 300 kilometers of laneways. There was a huge amount of social infrastructure built into the backs of these houses. What's really nice about that is the laneways are all in established neighborhoods. So you have a built-in school district, infrastructure, libraries, grocery stores, all the stuff that you need for housing is already there. So one of the reasons why they put a fairly serious restriction on what you could do, and they're starting to loosen it up a little bit over time, is to get more housing units behind the houses. You're not allowed to sever your lot, so you can't build one of these and then sell it for profit. You have to keep it as part of your lot, then you get like a tax deferral in perpetuity for having a second unit. So they've kind of figured it out. So on the left is the existing, and on the right is what the house looks like from the backyard of the existing house. So the existing house is in the slide on the left, is that kind of slightly weird elevation. We didn't touch that at all. So that is still there. It still looks like that. And the story of this project is the family originally wanted to build a cheap and cheerful laneway suite, move into it, tear down the existing house, and then rebuild that. That was going to be the dream house. The more we worked on the laneway suite, the more interesting it became to them as the project. So about 3 months in, we were designing kind of both at the same time, because you have to be careful about what you're doing on one because of fire codes. They said, you know what, we've changed our minds. We just want to live in the laneway suite. And I was totally fine. I was totally fine with that. Obviously, it's their decision. But I was a little surprised because they are a family of 5, 3 teen boys, and the largest square footage you can get per plate in the back is 800. So it's a pretty small area. So here you see is like a plan view, and then the main house is on the right. So I'm going to do kind of an AXO walkthrough from top down. So this is the roof garden, which is accessible through an operable skylight, and there's a skylight next to it. This is the floors. The house is kind of programmed upside down, so the floor that's going to have all the light is the floor that the family can hang out in. So it's kitchen, living, dining, a little powder room, little mechanical room. And then you have the 3 boys with bedrooms on the ground floor and their own bathroom. and then you have below grade mechanical room primary suite. So it's like exactly the opposite of how we normally design houses for clients. Normally it's primary on top, main bedrooms, and then the social spaces on the ground floor. Now the primary feature of the house is definitely the brick. So they said if we're going to live permanently on the laneway, we want the house to have gravitas. We want it to feel like a house on the main street. Primarily the houses in this neighborhood are all brick houses. So we collectively decided on red brick, and then frankly to keep it from being tagged and to give it some visual interest, because there's no room to move volumetrically in this house. This is as big of a thing as you can build. We decided to manipulate the facade, crank the bricks out, and it's every other row is cranked a different direction, so that there would be some kind of volumetric animation, albeit on the surface. It helps the building not get spray painted, because the laneways are pretty rough, and it really feels great, and it feels like it's a permanent residence. So here's a close-up on the left of the brickwork coming up near the balcony window, and the entry is clad in the charred wood siding on the right. So in this project, as every project, this is one slide of probably 150 brick patterns that we experimented with to make sure that it was buildable, and actually came together with all of the alignments. The clients for the house are an interior designer and a mid-rise contractor. So we knew he was going to have all his mid-rise trades build this project. In that kind of genre of work in Toronto, you don't get a lot of detail. It's pretty cheap and cheerful. So we literally drew every millimeter of every brick cranking out. We talked to the trades, figured out how it was going to get built, and worked through every single turned brick in plan and section all the way around the house. But as we all know, building is really, really sloppy. And so you go through this stage where the foreman, who's a newfie, and if you're from Canada, there's a whole world of jokes about newfies. He's a newfie, and he was there every day. We built it during COVID, working with the brick team. And what we had figured out together was that if they cut one of the bricks into 4 triangles, they can use that little triangle as the backup piece, and then mortar everything together. They struck all the lines. They had to do the first 3 rows 3 times and take them down to get all the spacing right. But as soon as they figured it out, they ran with it. And it turned out really beautifully. So here we'll do a quick walk through the house. So this is the boys' floor, and one of it's just one of their bedrooms, so they're kind of nicely. So Suzanne, the interior designer, kind of worked on these. Their bathroom, which has an obscured window to the main house, and the main kind of light pumping feature is to have an open riser stair underneath the operable skylight to the roof deck, and then there's also another skylight. We tried to puncture this volume with light coming from as many different directions as possible. So here's the top of the stair on a detail of the living room wall, and then looking back at the stair where you can see the 2 skylights next to each other right behind this window, which is a north-facing window. So almost every project we do, we've got skylight stacked on skylight, stacked on window. A view of the kitchen and the living room view, and the main window connects down the driveway to the street. So the primary suite, which is on the lowest level, also has a moment of light. So this was the kind of the tightest floor, so we lined it with functional millwork, and we put an outside garden with a kind of a grill on top, so that light comes in. This faces south, so this gets a ton of light. And then in the winter, they put a plastic covering on top, and it acts as a greenhouse. And it's just like, it doesn't look like much in the pictures, but it's a really lovely space, and it makes the primary suite feel really large. And this is their bathroom on that floor, and a view at night. And it's one of the ways that this is the first laneway house on the street. Now there are 4 others under construction. So this will start to take on its own life as a primary street relatively soon. So as much as Toronto is a city full of high-rises, and this is the downtown core with the CN Tower, and the core just keeps stretching all the way up Yonge Street, it really is a city of houses. Most recently, fourplexes were just zoned, like in 2024. So now on these skinny Victorian sites, you can start to build larger multifamily buildings. But I'd say 90% of the housing stock is kind of old, not in great shape Victorian houses. So Matt and I are going to have we're going to arm wrestle for who came up with the mullet house at the end of the lecture. So stay tuned for that. So there's a lot of project that we affectionately call the mullet. So it's modern on the front, Victorian on the front, modern on the back. And it's a solution to the high land value, the poor condition of the housing stock, and the ever increasing cost of construction in Toronto. So here's one such piece where we have the Victorian facade on the left, and then the addition is on the back. And oftentimes it's stitched together by a circulation core. So this is just a brief look at one of the projects that has a spiraling stair connecting up through the middle. This little project, House with a Mullet, is what we call it. It has a very charming Victorian facade, and that's on the left, and then the addition is on the right. And this was kind of, again, the one big move came with a figuration of the roof. You can see in the model where we canted the biggest window we could put together. It's a 14-foot high aperture on the backside, and then we canted it down and carved skylights into it. So you can see in the model on the right, there's a little bit of light coming through the center of that second floor. This was done for a graphic designer and a postal worker. So there they are in the back with their daughter. And this is the ground floor, fairly simple. So the addition carves away to make room for a skylight. And then this is the room. So again, a small project in our office is sort of like the one room project. But again, using all the techniques that we've learned over the years to carve light as many different times as we can into the volume to fill out the space. And this is a view looking out, and they're lucky to have, there's a street behind them and then a park right across. They've got really great foliage in the back and a view of the skylight. And then a night view we included just to show how the skylights get kind of rounded out in the evening. And this kind of discussion of light kind of comes into this project, which is probably, it's like fresh, and it's the latest one that we've kind of photographed and the clients moved into. This is called the House of Monitors, and we named it for a light monitor. And the ethos of this project found inspiration in the lives of the owners. So this is done for a shoring contractor and a scenic painter for the National Opera of Canada. So it sounds like a studio project that you'd get in graduate school. And they came to us, and I was like, "This, you guys can't be real, because do you really want a house like built around these things?" And they were like, "Oh," they were very into it. And she needed a space for painting, and then Tobin really wanted to be connected to the ground. So the site for this project is in a space called the Scarborough Bluffs. So the Scarborough Bluffs, shown in this historic image on the left, were the sand that has created the Toronto Islands. So these receded at about a meter a year, and the sand would get washed out to shore and then get caught in an eddy and then start to build up the Toronto Islands. So as soon as the 1960s rolled around and they started building suburban houses for a view of the lake, guess what happened? The shore receded a bit too much, houses started to tumble into the lake. So the TRCA, which is the same authority that protects all the ravines in downtown Toronto, said we've got to lock these ravines in place. So they planted all the ravines in this area to stop erosion. So now what everyone protects as the green cliffs of the Scarborough Bluffs are actually a total kind of landscape-initiated artifice, which I found really fascinating. And especially since Tobin's job as a shoring contractor is all about stability and slope stability and concrete and anchoring, I thought it was just kind of amazing that this was the site that we have for this house. This is a section through their actual site. It goes from tableland all the way to the water with the huge drop off and their edge is relatively stable, but they lose a tree into the lake every couple of years. So the volume study for this house is, if you see in the orange, those are, say, the concrete volumes coming up and touching the light. And then the white in the model on the left is this timber kind of floor that's elevated above the concrete foundation. Then a whole process of subtraction, kind of a big design process occurred where we started intersecting these volumes and removing space to get 2- and 3-story volumes, punctures through, views through, and it was a fairly intensive design process, resulting in here, you see the house as completed. So it's got a concrete basement, a concrete floor, first floor, both inside and outside, so it's a double wall construction with insulation between, and then a timber floor kind of hovering above. It's only a 2-story house, so all this kind of 3-story bits are all skylights and large spaces above. And there's a big cantilever on the front for parking below, because they did not want a garage on their front facade, and a huge cantilever on the back. So this is, it's a little bit hard to understand unless you're there, but this is one of the spaces where you come up onto the second floor and you're looking back through the front elevation. So the front elevation is screened with operable slatted screens, and then you see the light well on the left is to a 3-story space, and the light well on the right is to the painting studio. So just a quick, again, walking through the house, there's the front door is under the cantilever that you see in the image on the right. Much of the glazing on the ground floor is reeded glass, because it really is on a, there's a lot of activity on the street. They're putting their car there, and we wanted to keep the house feeling kind of airy and open and be able to see light through these surfaces, but not want a visual connection through. So here you see the stair to the second floor, wrapping up with the reeded glass window and the concrete walls both on the left and the right. And because he was ensuring, he wasn't, like, I thought we got pretty good concrete with this project. It's not perfect, and we left all of the imperfections, so any chalk line, any marking, we left, because he really wanted to see, oh my goodness, how it was built. And I feel like I've lost the screen again. Obviously, we've lost the screen again. And so I think the hardest part of construction of this project was the technical solution of how do we get concrete on 2 surfaces with the insulation between, because we needed to get at least 4 inches of rigid insulation in between the 2 halves. I'm just going to let you. Does anyone have any questions about anything I've shown so far? Because if the technical takes some time, I can always answer any questions to date. Curious about.
I see a question right over here. I'm just going to pass it on.
So beautiful work. I'm just impressive. Do you work with the same contractors throughout? Because I feel like there's certain kind of knowledge that they must gain, and then, each project, it seems like it's more, detailed than the last one.
Yes, we do. So there's 5 or 6 that we have that operate a variety of scales and levels of complexity. And so depending on who the client is and what their what the skill level is required to achieve what we need to achieve, we'll match 2 or 3, introduce them to the client, and see who is the best fit. Right now, there is only one mill worker that we're using regularly. It's a guy named Ben Lai, who has a studio, and they're just incredible craftsmen. They kind of have we have a love-hate relationship. Like, they take all the projects that we ask them to do, and then at the end, he's like, I don't know why we do this. Like, it's so hard. And I was like, well, it's because you guys are they're so good, and it turns out really beautifully. They do great shop drawings. And so at the end, they're really happy, but it's a little bit painful. The journey's a little bit painful for them, but they're really, really talented. They essentially saved that Osler Bluff Ski Club project. We insisted on carrying them. They were actually $500,000 cheaper than the contractor than the subcontractor that they kind of wanted to use, and moved up to site because it was about 2.5 hours from their homes, and they did the entire acoustic ceiling, and they did all of the millwork that you see in all the images. They were just brilliant. But yes, so we end up using the same, because once they understand what we're trying to achieve, it's a shortcut, and it means that we can get to the end much faster, for more economically as well. Great, thank you for the question. Yes? Yes. So, I'll do that really briefly, and then I'll get back to my slides. So, we were approached by someone who owned a site in what we call cottage country, so 2 to 3 hours north of Toronto, in the Lakes region of southern Ontario. Beautiful cottage properties, another set of kind of prized sites. And he had a cottage on a lake up in Minden, which is a small town, for 30 years, and was retired, and had a second piece of property that he never knew what to do with. So he donated the property to the Kawartha Lakes Halliburton Housing Corporation, which provides affordable housing. The housing rolls there are probably over 1,000 families long. You'd be surprised that some of these small towns in rural Ontario are as kind of clamoring for affordable housing as other places. And so he donated the land, and then he paid our design fee. And so the housing corporation, all they had to do was build it. And we have officially started construction. It's been in the office for 5 years. It took a very long time to get passage through all the different authorities. But we are there, and we're really excited. It's 36 units that are deeply affordable. So, and it will be geared mostly to women and children. It's right next to a huge public park, and it's also next to a Legion building where, like, 80 senior citizens play bridge every Wednesday, and so it is just the best location that we could possibly imagine. We're really, really excited by it. Okay. So here we are again. So here's Tobin. Now back to Scarborough Bluffs. They have an extensive record collection. So part of the acoustics of this ceiling that we did was for audiophiles to make sure that the sound both resonated and dampened as they needed it to. Here's a view of the kitchen. And what we'll quickly see is some of the subtractions coming through the house with this impluvium that's raining water down on the small green space outside the kitchen. And then where Yana is standing up there, that's actually a piece of master bedroom that kind of comes over and hooks around to grab a bit more south-facing window, and then an exterior deck on the second floor. This is a kind of a view of the 3-story section looking towards Kelly's painting studio. And then a view back the other way from the studio looking at the dining room space. So here's Kelly in her studio. So the light in the space is really fantastic. It's one of the few projects that we have that had allowed us such flexibility in developing a section. We're really thankful to Kelly and Tobin for giving us the opportunity to do this work. This is the primary bedroom. And just a view of one of the small light-filled spaces on the north side of the house. And then again, this is the master bedroom on the right that is actually enclosed. The impluvium you can see is right off the corner of the picture, and then you've got this outside deck, which is both uncovered and then becomes covered again as you move through some of these subtractions. So it was a really wonderful kind of experiment for us to develop these kinds of spaces, and a really great opportunity. So the last little project that I'm going to show you is it's a very small cottage, about 1,000 square feet. It's up in Magnetawan, which is 3 hours north of Toronto. And this project was inspired by the dog trot typology. So these 19th and early 20th century forms where you had 2 living spaces with an open space between, made to economically connect 2 separate structures. And this is the site in Magnetawan. So they have a huge property, but only a small fraction of it is buildable. So you have to be 30 meters away from the shore, and then it starts to steeply slope up, which is kind of belied. Doesn't look like there's that many contours, but there actually are quite a steep slope. So what's interesting about this is we wanted to view this house as a prototype. We had designed the first version of this about 15 years ago. It didn't get built. We recycled it, put it into a competition for an accessible dwelling unit. It came in like third place, so we didn't build that one. And then these are clients that we had in the city who we did a small addition for, and they said, we want a cottage. Do you kind of like, how do we do this cheaply with you? And I said, well, we kind of have something. But what the thing is that we want to build it as is. We don't want to customize it because that's what's going to be expensive. So the piece on the left-hand side of the red line is the only part of the cottage that would fit on the tableland. And we literally shoved the rest off of the tableland, and it floats out cantilevers off, because we said if it's going to be a prototype, it's got to act like a prototype. It's going to be what it is. And if it doesn't fit, it doesn't fit, and it's just going to fly off the edge of the site. And they said, okay, we can deal with that. So the idea of the project is very, very simple. It's almost all wood. There are 4 really skinny 4x4 steel columns and 1 beam coming out to support the cantilever back to a frost wall. So it's just a 4-foot wall that goes into the earth. A gable shape, and then the project is stabilized by the gables that march through the house. This is a view of the dog trot space that punches through to a view of the upper trees and the lake. And then this view is of the piece that's on the tableland, so you can see like the gable shape of the house, which we just wanted to reiterate over and over and over again through the section. And then this is the piece that flies off the edge. So these are the stairs that you take down to go swimming, and then the primary bedroom is in the little piece of plan. It's on this side of the house. This was all prefabricated by a great builder who lives up in this area. It is like the classic passive house section. It's not certified, but the walls are about 16 inches thick. It's a 9.5-inch stud, fully foamed, with a second layer of open stud work on the inside to run all the services through. It's got smart vapor barriers. It is just every surface is tied together with really kind of high performance barriers. And you can see the stack. That's the shop on the upper left, a stack of panels on the right. As soon as the ground froze, they poured the foundation in the fall, the ground froze, and they trucked everything to site and craned it all into place, and then finished it over the spring. It's like fascinating. So the black thing on the right isn't a beam. That's actually a vapor wrapped wood piece, and then they're held together with these like big, like giant toggle boats, essentially. So this is a view. It's all wrapped in weathered 6-inch cedar siding, and then the colored parts of wood are pre-finished. The Mabec siding is like Cape Cod. It's one of these like baked on, really kind of cheap and cheerful finishes, which we then took to the inside of the cottage. So in order to alleviate this big section of any structure, we put all the structure into these gable walls, and that stiffens it, and it makes it, because the system's panelized, you don't need anything else. So it's actually a very, very simple system that gives you a giant cathedral ceiling all the way through the whole project. So this is a view on the left of the living space, and if you turn around and look, you see the blue wall of the kitchen, which is set into one of these structural walls, with a guest room on the left, a little bathroom on the right, and the screen is for a mezzanine space, which takes the space over the top of the dog trot. You see the primary bedroom again. That same shape is reiterated. And then the white volume that you see coming in on the right-hand side of the page is this cute little bathroom next to the primary bedroom. And in the winter, that part of the house is shut down, and they move. It's a 4-season cottage. They move onto the other side, which has a wood-burning stove. It uses almost no energy. It gets its water from the lake. It doesn't have air conditioning. They just open the skylights and part of the reason why you use like a kind of heavily shaded windows, and in the woods it didn't catch a lot of light, is the heat gain is almost nothing. So it's pretty sweet. So one of the big ideas of this, and this is a drawing that we did for the competition, was that you could string them through and make a small community out of them. And so this is a rendering of some of the houses where you could connect a boardwalk as a community space through multiples of these homes. But for today, we'll just leave here with Adam and Gwen enjoying the view in their small cottage in northern Ontario. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Betsy, for that amazing lecture. We also want to thank our sponsors for the night, Catherine Hogan and Women in Architecture, for the reception. We also want to open up the floor for any questions. Just raise your hand. There we go.
Thank you. Betsy, thank you again for being here and sharing your work with us, here in the capital city of North Carolina. Honestly, I am just stunned by the beauty of your work. The beauty, the creativity, the thoughtfulness. I'm just like, take me there now, And I feel like the question I have, quite honestly, it feels like a stupid question, to be very honest with you. So I apologize to the architects, to the professionals in the audience, but it's just like, how do we cultivate this kind of creativity, this sort of thoughtfulness, this sort of just, you know what I'm saying? Is that a crazy question? Am I crazy? I just feel like what you're doing is amazing, and I'm like, how do we cultivate that? How do you facilitate this everywhere?
Well, from what I saw the last day and a half, you've got fabulous architects here in Raleigh, and their work is exceptional. And so you have the talent here for sure to make projects, and it is. I don't really know how to answer your question, so I'll maybe dance around it a little bit. But it's kind of like it's like the holy trinity of a good building is a good architect, a great client, and a really good builder. And if you can get all three to be in sync, I don't think that our market in Toronto is that different from your market here. Our work is, there's a lot of not great stuff in Toronto that if you go, you'll be like, oh my goodness, okay, this is what we're dealing with. But it's sort of like if the passion of the architects could be supported through clients that are willing to go there and have someone from a construction who's sometimes willing to take a risk. Like the builders that do our projects don't only do work like ours, they do a lot of different kinds of work. And I think when they work on our projects, they understand they've got to really take it to the next level. Like when the mid-rise construction team built that laneway house, they knew it was really special, and they all were very excited to see how it was going to turn out because they had done nothing like that before. So being able to have both an architect and a client that can cultivate that in the trades is really important.
Thank you. And just before I pass the mic, I do want to acknowledge, I think you're absolutely spot on. We have the talent right here in the city. Yeah. I think many of those architects are in the room tonight. Mm-hmm. So I really appreciate the response, that sort of holy trinity, if you will, of architect, construction team, client. Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Betsy, thank you so much for the lecture. Beautiful work. But I want to highlight the light and the use of light they use in your projects, and both natural and artificial lights. I think it's absolutely stunning. And I wanted to ask you how important those things are, what's your process, and how you define and design artificial and natural light within your projects.
There's an image that I sometimes put in the lecture of Kelly wearing VR goggles as we were designing the skylights for her painting studio. And so we're a highly digital firm, bleeding edge, but our work isn't digital per se in terms of how it's made, let's say, but we rely on rendering interfaces to simulate what the light is going to look like in our project. So when we were working with her specifically about her painting studio, we had modeled 5 or 6 different shapes of ceiling, put the skylight in a number of different places, and then we're able to run through the light simulation software to show her what it would look like in every season, and morning and at night. And so we often complain that clients demand to see too many renderings now, as opposed to like back in the day when you would just trust that your architect would be delivering the right thing for you. But now we rely as much on those renderings as our clients do to make sure that everything is really coming together and the quality of light is what we want to achieve. We always think about redundancy in terms of skylights and natural daylighting. That's something that's kind of been in every project from the very beginning. Now we can see it a little bit more clearly and show it to our clients so that they are also convinced that it's the right thing to do.
Thank you for showing us your beautiful work. You've talked about energy efficiency in a couple of projects, but you've also got huge expanses of glass.
Yeah.
And I was wondering where energy efficiency and sustainability falls as a priority for the firm, and how you balance the potential cold areas within a building because of the large expanses of glass.
I mean, what's interesting is that none of the projects that you've seen today are over 20% glazing. So our projects tend to hover around 15 to 18%, which is really, really low for a custom home. So number one is we reduce the number of windows primarily on the north side of a house so that we can insulate enough wall to balance that loss that you're going to naturally get at a big window. Every single project that we've done in the last 15 years have had solar panels on them. So we're also trying to generate at least a little bit of electricity on every single project. Some have a lot more. The house on Ancaster Creek has a 30 kVA solar array on it, which almost takes their entire electrical load. We're looking at trying to get projects off of natural gas as well. So there's been 2 projects that are fully electric. It's tricky in a winter city to do that, but that's also an impetus. And these are all things that we know we can achieve on projects, and we know we can achieve from our builders. Our walls are typically R40, our roofs are R60. And so we super insulate, use the smart vapor barriers, and build the dumbest envelope we can to make sure that when we are taking, say, the big wall of glass at the kitchen, that at least it's balanced out by other things. We have one project that's still under construction that is weirdly almost all, it's like the opposite of what I just said. So it is a huge amount of glazing, and makes up because the insulation on the roof is even over and above R60, and it has an enormous solar field next to it because it's a rural project. So it's we don't hold back from doing kind of the design piece, but our natural inclination is to not be overly don't put in too. We don't ever like put in too much glass, frankly, except for this one house. But yeah. Great. Hey.
Yes. 2 questions. The first one is you mentioned the use of geometry as a focal point for your concept formation. And I would like you to expatiate more on that. I've seen some of it, but I want to know how you use geometry to actually start conceptualizing of your projects. Mm-hmm. Then number 2 is the question of setbacks and permitting, because most of the sites I saw, they were quite small sizes. So how do you handle the issue of setbacks for the purposes of permitting?
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's the easy part of the question, so I'll do that first. So There is an application that you can do in Toronto where if you want to build outside the zoning envelope, all of our setbacks tend to be respected relative to the zoning bylaws. So we just build in the envelope that we can. However, where we go over is oftentimes in height and rectilinear roofs versus pitched roofs. So generally, we are able to build what we want to build within the zoning bylaw. When you see a flat roof house that's got any kind of elevation, that is definitely an exception to the rule because the bylaws don't allow for that. They want to see pitched roofs everywhere. So that's sort of the easy answer. So I think maybe you're asking like where do we start? Like where do we start with geometry? How do we come up with the forms that you see? I mean, there's things that we like to achieve in projects. Like we like multiple height spaces. We like moving through sections. So we love stairs. We try to do a different stair in every project. And then spaces that will naturally then spiral off of those spaces. So I could say maybe geometry starts at the core of movement through the home. So how you go from one floor up to another one, or if the land is dropping away, how you can move through the house to experience that maybe in other ways. So I think that movement through section is sort of at the heart of how we begin projects. And then we love seeing spaces through other spaces. So our ideal is if you can, see a space and then outside and then another space. So we're always trying to kind of excavate the mass of the house, to open it up, to make it airy, and to kind of layer spaces. So I think those two principles are the driving principles beyond the, with the geometry that we're showing. When we're working with light and skylights, we try to purposefully soften edges. So the curvature that you see will come from there. So if you've got a skylight, we try to kind of drive the light down by softening the edge. Mostly all of these spaces are done in drywall or wood, so it's relatively easy to achieve, so that we can sculpt surfaces that light can kind of travel down and bounce off of. So that is maybe the third principle. Thank you, that was a good question.
Betsy, thanks for the amazing talk, and apologies for the technical difficulties. My question is maybe a bit on the nose and forward-looking, but I love that you ended the lecture tonight with maybe one of the more intimate, smaller scaled, back to the basics isn't the right word, but kind of essential or down to the essence projects. And I wondered, is that where your firm is looking as you go forward, or would you like to get into more of the larger scale work that you showed aspirationally at the beginning?
Well,
or both?
Well, we do. I'd say right now we're looking and working on some of the larger scale projects. So that this cottage, the last one I showed, was finished just a year ago, and it was sort of like on the side, like a piece. It was because we were able to realize something we had been thinking about for so many years. We were really excited about making it, but we are currently working on, almost all of our offices working on, a very large tennis club building in downtown Toronto. So not the same at all as Osler, but a similar situation where there is a particular kind of historic building that was on site that we're removing because it's been torn apart over so many years. We're tearing the whole thing down and replacing it with a brand new building. So it's a 60,000 square foot sports facility, frankly, that has squash courts, dining spaces. It opens onto beautiful clay courts, and it's in the middle of a neighborhood. So it's still it's very much an urban project, but one that has a lot of different size spaces, which is really exciting, and a very different program than we've used before. So that's what's currently on the boards and what currently everyone is working on in the office. We tend to balance about half residential and then half something else. Sometimes it's commercial, sometimes it's a small institutional project like this. But keeping the thinking in the residential work, we really like. We really like doing those kinds of projects because they're small, they're a little bit faster, and there's with the right kinds of clients, there's a lot that you can achieve and experiment with in those smaller projects. So we're trying to have a foot maybe in both worlds.
Well, can we get another round of applause for Betsy
Yay,
Williamson?
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Betsy.
Thank you for having me.
And I will also ask the students attending Real Matter to please stand up and be recognized. It will happen tomorrow also. Thank you guys for being here. Just a reminder, this Friday, the students will be presenting their work that they've been working really hard on. It's going to be a show of work at the Institute studio at 5:30, so please stop by and take a look if you can. Tomorrow is our last lecture of the lecture series. We're going to hear another amazing talk by Sebastian Adamo. So we hope to see you all here, and thank you so much.